Hey. Welcome back. What was the last cold plunge temp you had in the lake out there?
It's funny you ask because
you got to be in the high 40s, right? Right about now?
Last night I got in, I was like, damn, this feels a little bit more like a bite. And I've been measuring it in the morning after I write for a while, and I went out this morning, it was 40.8.
Oh!
Yeah, so I think it was a little chiller than I thought last night.
Dude,
Plus, it was
no
like
kidding,
25
right?
degrees outside, man. Windy, waves on my neck. Oh, bliss.
Dude, I love it, dude. That's awesome. Yeah, we are back on a beautiful Tuesday, fall and brisk Tuesday. It's November 11th. The year is 2025. Welcome, everybody. You're listening to the Crushing Iron Podcast, and this is episode 889.
It is, man. I'm actually glad you brought that up because we're starting to face some bitter temps up here. And
dude,
it's like we were saying beforehand. It's like if you're doing anything, you're doing something right about now. So keep it up.
Listen, we've discussed this a long time ago when I lived here the first time. I kind of became a little bit of a fan of winter. I mean, I generally like the cold, but it's a bit much like the hard entry. Because like last week, early in the week, we had in like the 70s, and I got up yesterday morning, and at least for me, I know not everyone is like this. And yes, if you're just tuning in, yes, we're going to cover some of the world championships over the weekend, but yeah, like above, like 80 and above, like an endurance run for me takes like 80 degrees and up, like in the summer, and your humidity and dew point. It definitely, like, I come back and I'm like, man, that, even if I'm running easy, God, it fucking takes something out of me. Like just the conditions. And yesterday was the same. I got up, I got dressed. You got to freaking, account for an additional, 6.5 minutes just to get your winter attire on. And to get out there is 14. And that has the same effect on me. I found like 20-ish, and I know a lot of it, especially like in the Midwest, like really, it's all about the wind. Like if there's no wind, I think I can be like low teens and still be pretty solid. But if it's below 20 and it's windy, man, it just bites you right in the face. I'm not even like 100 meters in, my eyes are watering. I'm like, got the tears crusting to my face because they're frozen. But it took me about an hour and a half after, just a 40-minute aerobic run. It just took the conditions and how cold it was. It just takes a little bit to get used to, right? Because your temptation is to want to run a little bit harder out of the gate because you're like, man, does an aerobic one even really feel right? Even like feel good right now because I want to raise my body temp. But you want to keep it, the integrity of it. And then honestly, like the same thing kind of goes for, like the hard stuff. You're like, do I really want to try and go run hard outside when it's cold? Because sometimes it's hard to get your heart rate up. Your muscles take a little bit longer to get, juice. But once we all get used to it, we all quit, bitching and moaning and complaining about it. But yeah, it's a little chilly. And I'm okay with that. I got to embrace it further. Of course, you get these like teasers, and now it's going to be freaking cold again, or excuse me, warm again this coming weekend. And I'm like, man, like I just gotta give me consistent 20s to 30s. Anything below that, 25 to 40, I think I'm okay.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Yeah, it is weird. It's like adaptation, and I'll admit that I actually got soft yesterday. It was the afternoon. I was going to run outside. I got on the treadmill. I was like, I'm not going. And I was kind of mad at myself for doing that, by the way. But
how come?
Well,
because you still got something in. So why are you mad that you didn't? Was it windy, or was it just like the treadmill looked a little bit cozier? Like I can just go shirtless. I don't have to go with the whole wardrobe change. Well, why are you disappointed in yourself? Just interesting.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think it's because it was windy and it was in the 20s. But I think because I want to sort of fashion myself as someone who seeks that out. It just goes to show you, action is more powerful than words. And I can,
yes,
it's like we say shit sometimes and don't always do it. But I mean, it is a little hard maybe on the, myself, but I still want to try to be that person more, as much as possible. Cause it wasn't like it was a super soft. I mean, like most people wouldn't even have got on the treadmill, but it's like,
That's what I'm saying. All right.
yeah, I get that, but, still, I mean, come on. I mean, it's sort of like, you kind of get the old, well, if I just decide I don't want to go anymore, I'm not going to be halfway around the lake when I stop. What I mean?
Yeah, that's the catch with the treadmill, right? You're like, it is so, and the same thing with the trainer. You're like, yeah, but I could just hop right off.
Yeah, I could get something to drink. I could get, go to the bathroom, whatever.
Listen, I'm not going to disagree with you, but at the same time, like, I think we are entering, and we had a similar, kind of like conversation when we talk about like in the winter time, right? Or excuse me, the summertime, when you're like, yeah, I want to go outside and I want to be tough and I want to make sure that I'm getting, the right, stimulus from, being outside. It's going to be hot. I can't just avoid it completely. Right. I've got to have at least something outside. But then again, like if you do it every single time, then it eventually just kind of like burns you out. Right. I mean, you can't do it every single time. So I get it. Like I have, a little bit of the comfort shame, if you will, that we all kind of have sometimes if we're like, yeah, but this seems so easy. But here's the thing is, like you said, you're still doing it because this time of year it's hard, to pretty much, really not to do anything, but you're far away from races. You're maybe in no man's land. The conditions aren't awesome. No one's like super jazzed to get up and, go stand on the pool deck, freezing cold and hop in. You got, windy conditions. Some people getting freaking snow already, which like cut it out with that 4-letter word. I'm not ready for it yet. And then, you're probably stuck on the bike trainer. It's like, yeah, you got all these temptations out there. And then, I was actually thinking of this last weekend, as I was watching the 70.3 World Championship Saturday and Sunday. I'm like, a lot of people use like a lot of these races to watch like replays and on YouTube or outside TV. It's kind of like fuel to kind of get them through the season. You got Super Tri, you got WCS. Man, in like 2 weeks, those are gone. It's over. Then you're not having these like kind of bumps, with kind of the professional racing stimulus and tracking your friends. Like there's gonna be nobody to track. Like there's not that many races, so it is. But kudos to you for hopping on the treadmill. A lot of people wouldn't. They would have found, because most people either I'm all outside or nothing, or some people are like I'm all inside or nothing. And so I think it's good to have that ability to kind of toggle between. I want to like embrace the discomfort, but I'm also, I'm also comfortable. Maybe taking the comfort route. So, someday
well,
it's really not a bad thing.
You made a good point about how you're out running a zone 2 run in that weather. I mean, the weather yesterday for me, I would call it high zone 3, as far as like wind and cold and all that kind of. I mean, it's sort of sometimes I like to put I change the zone based on time with my plunges. So I'll do a zone 1, it might only be a minute, and I'll go zone 3, it might be 3 minutes, whatever like that. But like the weather, if I just wanted to have an easy run yesterday and going out in that weather, that immediately ramps it up to a little bit of a harder effort, so that can play in, I guess, too, because it's like, I guess, and almost like would have been just, if I would have wanted a zone 2 or 1 type of run, I might as well have walked in that weather, because it equals out. It's like, holy shit.
Yeah, dude.
But
listen,
there's nothing like breaking through it,
You did it. There's no shame. There's no shame. And there was zero shame in the champions over the weekend. I knew we had a ton of athletes racing over there, and I think everybody knew. And I will have to say, like, as much crap as Ironman gets for a lot of stuff, it's really good to see them like embrace for a world championship, to actually embrace like seeking out a really, 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 really difficult course.
Yeah.
Because listen, it's interesting in a way, right? And we'll talk about the results. Obviously, Lucy Charles Barkley came back from what was an epic, which, we'll talk about too, is like the two ladies that had these epic implosions of like cinema and drama, so close to winning it in Kona, 4 weeks later being able to rebound, not just physically, but also mentally and emotionally to take 1 and 2, was just wild. But anyway, it's like the difference in Ironman what I would call like regular season racing. So like age group races, the new races they're putting out versus the championship races are completely polar opposite. Like right now, Ironman, and they started this, right? Like for the most part, not all these races, but they started doing this when they went away from Clearwater because it was pancake flat. The same people were winning every year because it's the same old, same old. Pack dynamics were huge. The in the Chattanooga, they came in, they're like, all right, we're not going to use the regular Chat 70.3 course. We're going to, go up the most mountainous terrain you can possibly do in Chattanooga, which I have always thought, if you want to make that race great again, do that, right? Get out of the highway, make it a hard course. But they made it a 2-day event. The course was super challenging. You had to swim upstream, pros and age groupers. And now they're kind of looking for 70.3s. Like they went to Nice, right? They picked a really, really difficult bike course, that was very mountainous over in Europe. And then obviously the run was a little bit easier, but it was hot that day. And then this course was just absolutely ridiculous. I think they said over the 70.3, the elevation gain was more than Ironman Nice. Over a 70.3. And the run, billed as maybe like flat to rolling, was actually more challenging than I think people had given it credit for. A lot of turns, a lot of switchbacks, up and down some, kind of like man-made bridges. But kudos to them for making these championship races like really worthy of being called a championship, instead of what they're doing for like normal racers. Like, let's go find cities with the flattest terrain possible in downriver swims and make those, which is interesting, right? Because you're getting people into the sport that some of them probably do have aspirations, kind of maybe want to qualify for some of these races. And they're like, man, like I can do these races, but man, that one sounds super challenging. But on the other side, that's what the sport's about, I think, right? Championship level racing should be on very, 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 very difficult courses. But yeah, I mean, just watching it, I woke up Saturday morning just on a whim, made the giant mistake of looking to see what time it was, and it was 3:30, and I was like, fuck. I can probably, I was done. I was like, I can probably catch the last bit of the women's race and start tracking some of the ladies we had racing. So I did. I went downstairs and watched outside TV and turned it on. It ended up being a huge mistake. My Saturday was a slugfest. But the women's race, I mean, one was seeing, again, like we talked about, seeing Taylor Knibb. And I think this is a great lesson, right? Like both races to me were great lessons in different ways. And we'll talk about both. But the women's race, you had arguably the most important race of the year. You had Lucy Charles Barkley, get passed by Taylor Knibb, then pass her back. And then they both had these epic meltdowns from, dehydration and heat related, I would say, illnesses that took him out so close to being the champion. And then which also is interesting because, you had other people win, Solveig Larsson, the Norwegian. I'm not going to try to pronounce her full name because I would do it a great injustice. She wins, right? And now she's kind of immediately billed as like the next big thing. Kat Matthews second again. And I've always thought you kind of wonder if they both, we talked about it in the post race, kind of like podcast, is like, if they kind of work together and they don't try to like completely dominate each other, do they both go in and then we're still talking about them and everybody else is kind of like still back at the back, not back at the back, but they're not seen as what they are because they ran themselves out of it. So they have these huge disappointments, right? Both mentally, physically, and emotionally. And to bounce back, because I think a lot of people were curious if they were even going to make the start. Right. Yeah, you do a huge Ironman, right. You do a huge Ironman build, which isn't necessarily the best, right? At least you would think for 70.3 kind of speed and fitness. I do think the terrain of this race helped, right? The longer the bike course, they had that muscular endurance, that strength, and it sure as hell showed, right? They were the two best cyclists, I thought, in Kona. And I think the benefit of that longer stuff, like if this had been a shorter, flatter course, I don't think they would have gotten the gaps they did. But they were able to still an arrow crushing out some of these climbs. And then they came back and to produce the 1 and 2 and to see Lucy Charles Barkley come back and when she is on and healthy, I don't think she's beatable. I really don't. I think, I mean, she showed that when she went wire to wire in Kona. She showed that when she won 70.3 Worlds in St. George. When she is on, I think she's unbeatable because she just swam front pack. To see her hang on the nib anyway, but just seeing her emotion when she crossed the finish line was amazing. And I think it was a really great moment and a great lesson, right? Especially for age group athletes who can get so up in their feelings and up in their, their headspace, right? Like lack of confidence. I've got to change. I've got to completely change course. I had a bad race. Like my season's over. What am I going to do? Maybe I'm not, built for long course racing. No. Right? You think she changed everything in 4 weeks? No, she's like, you know what? I'm fit. I had a bad race. I made mistakes. This is an opportunity for me to go back and show the fitness that I've got, to show that I mean, you've had athletes do this too, right? They go out and whether it's, a mental, emotional block or just a physical day where things aren't clicking, they're in great shape, but they go out and they toe the line. They're like, I had an athlete do this for Ironman Chattanooga. He came out, I wouldn't say laid a complete egg, but I think it was more of a mental, emotional headspace that brought on physical issues that ended up being a DNF. And we kind of reconvened, and he was like, hey, for North Carolina, which is again a 3-week turnaround, like not long from Ironman to 70.3. To is like, hey, let's do this and let's just go for broke. Some people have been like, hey, I just lost, I just DNF'd. I had a terrible race. I thought I was in great shape. Let me just prolong this because I'm afraid I might lose again. And what's that going to do to my psyche? But he didn't. Towed the line, North Carolina 7.3, snagged a PR. It just takes a ton of courage, I think, to put yourself back out there so quickly, especially on the pro level. When if you fail again, people will be like, have they lost it? So again, like on the women's race side, it was just really, really impressive to see them both bounce back. And I think a great message to age group athletes, not to let one race define you, but two, don't be afraid to get back out there and go for it. Even if you're not sure how it'll go.
Yeah, man, that is huge what they did, to be honest. I mean, it's like, you talk about a bounce back, but I think of that as sort of like just this awesome mental like turnaround, because you talk about, having a bad race and then turning around. But like, I think a lot of people have bad workouts and be like, oh man, I saw you, whatever. It's like, it's amazing to me how much things can change, in the course of a few days or a week or something like that, especially if you're in the ballpark, like we talk about, or if you're in decent shape, you're going to have a bad day or, I think about this all the time. I've talked about how if I have a really good workout or like something I'm really feeling good about 1 week ago, and I have a bad one today, I'm like, I'm only a week away from having like an unbelievable showing, and I still got it. I just didn't have it today. So I just think it's really important and how they turn that around. Obviously, they were physically and mentally crushed out at Kona, and then to come back and it's almost like letting go, like you're saying, and having the courage just to go face it again, because it's not like everything's, it's like, saying something stupid and then thinking that's all how it's going to be forever. It's just like, it was a moment, you can't get stuck in the moment, making a bad decision out on the race course or something like that. And, that isn't going to define you. And clearly it is a beautiful example of how things can just, change and stay the same, I guess, because for them to both bounce back and just show it, that's just impressive to me, man. I don't know if they, what they went through to get there, if they just got done and said, well, I just screwed up, or I just had a bad day. And then the next day were they clean mentally? I don't know. It's almost like it feels like that, because you just kind of, like we talk about, having a short memory, like a defensive back, you get burned one play. You can't let that be in your head. You just have to go forward because you have the talent, you have the skill, and you've proven it, and you've done all the work. That doesn't define you just because of one play or one race or one workout or any of that kind of stuff. So it is nice to see that, because I think it is a perfect example and a good thing a lot of us can kind of hold on to just in general.
Oh, for sure. I mean, and I think it's interesting just in the fact that, a lot of people it would have been very easy. And obviously, if this wasn't a championship event, right, the response probably wouldn't have been the same. Right, they probably have been like, if 70.3 Worlds happened before Kona and the Kona happened, they probably would have been like so keen to go back out and race again. They would have said, I'm probably going to call it next year. But again, like I know there's a lot to be made too, like on the, on the physical side, right? Too, because when you have stuff like what happened to them with heat, it can be a career ruining or heavily impacting day. And there's case after case of athletes who have had these kind of historic meltdowns in the heat that were never able to come back and race in like remotely warm weather again, because their body just says, no, I self-preservation is my number one goal, and this doesn't qualify. And so again, while the like the physical part in terms of like just being cleared to race was obviously a huge piece of it, to me the mental and emotional piece was even more incredible. And we mentioned this like in a way, talking about when all the girls did Trans Rockies was, yes, the distance and the duration, the elevation was incredibly challenging and unique, but it was the decision to get up every day knowing what you adjust on the day before, and then it still wasn't going to feel good. It was going to possibly feel worse, but you still did it.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
to me, that's the thing is like, they're like, man, that last race sucked. I went to the pain cave just a little bit ago. And to me, that's the interesting part is like, we also talk about there are a certain number of matches you can go each year. So to be able to rally and go deep again, or at least risk going that deep, knowing the last time you did it ended in failure, right? It ended in failure, not even a finish. And to put yourself back out there 4 weeks later, I found it incredibly courageous. And I thought it said a whole lot about their winning mentality and how they're willing. Again, I didn't see it as a risk. It just spoke to me, like this is just who they are. They are willing to put themselves out there. And if they lose, they lose. Because again, if they had lost and they had, and gotten like fourth or fifth, people like, oh, they never should have raced. Like that was a terrible decision. Who let them do that? Instead, they went out 4 weeks later and whipped everybody's ass and got 1 and 2.
Yeah. It's amazing. That was a really good point about, how your athlete with the Ironman and the turnaround did a 70.3. It's like I think sometimes you wonder if Kona would have been the end of the season, or like you said, it wasn't. Maybe there's other races out there. If you pack it in, or is because I've seen so many people kind of turn it around after a race and do another one, but if they don't have one, they sort of pack it in. You know what I mean? It's like how far can you go in that well, and then or. It's just amazing how your mindset, it's like, I have no choice right now. I have to go back in. And then you keep going in. Or if given the option, are you just going to kind of fade away? Because that's sort of what happens. It's like, and we talk about that now, and I'm fighting that all the time. It's sort of like I get done with Wisconsin or whatever, and then it's sort of like, there's nothing really on the calendar. I got to rush it. But can you manufacture sort of just a consistency? And, obviously we talk about that all the time, but I also wonder, I was thinking as you're talking of what if they would have melted down in a 70.3 and then had an Ironman coming in 4 weeks, if it would have been different, because now they just, whenever they melted down was like mile 19 or 20 or whatever. Of a long ass race. This probably feels like no big deal doing a 70.3 to them in a certain way. It's like, well, I can go out and get this done. But I mean, obviously the intensity is a little bit different, but yeah, I mean, it's like you just turn around and do an Ironman, or can you turn around and do a 70.3? That's one thing that time when we did Goose Pond, I did that. I did a 70.3 without doing anything after Ironman. So it's like there's something mentally, I think, knowing you're trained up for a long ass race like that and then being able to kind of turn it around and go get this. But either way, it's just like super impressive. And you're right. If they wouldn't have finished 1 and 2, it would have probably been like, that really got him. That really got him.
Mm-hmm.
But now the haters are going to be out there going, they got nothing. You know?
Yeah, dude. And again, like, good for them, right? To put themselves out there. And again, like, again, like, and the crazy part is that we as age groupers don't even have any of those pressures.
Right.
We don't have sponsors. We don't have people training up besides, like, 3 people, that you probably still have to explain to, like, what you do, when you go out there and do these races. But, like, we are not on the stage that they are at. And yet still, like just like you said, I love what you said about, like, just workouts. We get so polarized one way or the other on one session, or honestly, even like 1 week. 1 week. You have a couple rough sessions, you're like, I just don't think things are working. And a lot of that, to me, like, when an athlete expresses those kind of feelings, to me, it's like, all right, this isn't training related. What's going on with your life? Like, because a lot of times it's, you really need, like, you have this desire to outweigh or maybe bring into balance the other things you have going on in your life that maybe aren't going very well. And let's be honest, I mean, like, yeah, age group athletes, for the most part, not always, because, I mean, hell, you saw a freaking Yella Geens, who's a father and a husband, take 70.3 world championships. We'll talk about that race in a little bit, but I mean, so it's not like they don't have stressors, right? But for the most part, on a percentage basis, most age group athletes have significantly more stress, right, and responsibilities than professionals. And so a lot of times, I know this because, I've done that before, and I know athletes do this quite frequently, is that you look for your training, right, as an outlet, and you want that outlet to be a net positive or a win. And if you go into it with an expectation, or you need it to feel good, or you want to, and it doesn't, then you're searching and wanting and maybe even, like, unfairly making decisions. All right, this isn't where I need something different. But it's not that. Is that you just need to feel a win. You're so stressed in some area of your life that things aren't going well, or maybe you're sick, or maybe you're under recovery, maybe you're not sleeping, maybe your nutrition is terrible, maybe you're just a little bit tired this week. Right? Maybe you're in a hard time adjusting to the time change, or the, waking up and it's dark, going to bed when it's dark, like, all those things can accumulate, but you need a win because you need to balance out the rest of your life. Like, I've never had a conversation with an athlete that, about training and them thinking they need an adjustment that has been completely happy, content, and in a smooth spot with life. Mm-hmm. Because it's always, well, I just, things aren't going well, and this also isn't going well. Okay, well, then let's focus on that. But again, age group athletes, we just look for other things, right? Because training is our outlet. It's supposed to relieve stress, supposed to add value. And if it doesn't, then you're like, man, like, what do I need to do? So I need something to change because I need some happiness. And so you want to pivot quick. And, like we talked about before we went live, talking about, so college football and coaching and all this kind of stuff is, a lot of times the absolute best thing to do is to do nothing, is to not change. And I think that's really hard for athletes. And again, I'm sure it was really difficult. But sometimes I think a relief, right? Because you got both those ladies had, like, there was no time to be like, all right, coach, right? They both coached by Dan Lorang. All right, you know what? We're not even sure we can race. So I'm not even sure what we're going to be able to do training wise, but let's just reinvent the wheel and expect the next, like, 3.5 to 4 weeks to make a giant difference. If it had been 12 to 16, maybe you're thinking, all right, I struggled on this part of the race. So let's focus on that, and let's change up from, this training model to this training model, and then see what happens. They had no time. And a lot of times it's best to just get back. It's like they say, get back on the horse. If you fall, get right back up, because the longer you stay there, the less likely you are to get up. Like, don't sit there and think. Don't give yourself long enough time to consider not doing it again. Get your ass out there again. Go do it again. Like, because the longer you sit and wait and think, the longer you are to likely continue to sit, wait, and think. I mean, that's where most people are right now with their training, right? They're like, I'll just start back in January. I don't want to see it. I'll just wait. and then you wonder why people fail. So again, kudos to them. It was just a insane display of racing and fitness, and again coming back, and just a great message overall. I thought to age groupers who, again, like, we often marvel at the physical nature and the accomplishments and the pace and the power that these professional athletes put out, but one of the things I think we could, all learn from them even more so, that's relatable, and also, because many of us, myself included, just can't relate to the speed in which these ladies and men are competing at and racing at. Can't relate, right? Don't see myself ever, doing that in an event. But what you can see yourself doing is taking some of their mental and emotional approach to training and to life and to bouncing back into, adapting on the day or overcoming a disappointment, right? Or maybe not taking themselves too seriously or getting back out there. Like, those are things we can readily apply to not just our life, but to our training.
Right. I was just thinking as you're talking, I mean, have you read anything or heard anything about how they handled the time between Kona and the World Championships?
I've heard that. I mean, I don't know training wise. I know Taylor Knibb did like some extensive like medical tests, which I think most people would after having she wasn't pulled off the course like Lucy was. She just fell over. Like she got knocked down. And so I think after that, she obviously had, some medical tests done. From what I understand from Lucy, she had not just to recover from the race itself, right, in the heat, but also the travel. I mean, Hawaii and Spain aren't close together. But also it sounds like she had like a tremendous amount of outside family stress, maybe even the loss of a loved one, and spent some days visiting in the hospital, not for her, but for someone else. So stress on stress on stress on stress on stress. Now from the training side, I can't speak to that. I don't follow either one of them in any kind of training thing, but yeah, I mean, but both was very cautious, but ultimately felt obviously that one, they both wanted to be there, but two, they were cleared to be there. And then, went out there and, if you're going to, that's another lesson, right? If you're going to toe the line, be ready to toe the line and toe the finish. And I think that's, to them, there was no, I'll just go out there and see how it feels. It was, if I'm going to toe the line, I'm toeing the line because I think I can win and do well. And if you, and especially as a pro, right? If you go in with the mentality of, let me just see how things go because, Kona didn't go well. I'm not sure how my body's going to handle it. You're already on your back foot and you're going to get blown out of the water. So for them to be able to again, they both did, I'm assuming, their due diligence on the medical side, to toe the line. I saw no fear. I saw no back foot. I saw no pacing it. I saw no nothing. I saw two ladies that got broke 4 weeks ago completely go for broke on Saturday with absolutely no regard. It was like 4 weeks ago didn't happen.
Impressive, man.
Wild. Yeah, which was wild. The men's race, dear God. I did not get up. At 3:30, I told myself after the rough day that I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try and sleep in as long as I can. The race will be over. Maybe the upload to Outside TV will be available, and then I can just not turn my phone on until I see what happens. So that's what I did. Turn on, watch the race. Obviously, everyone is, if you're tracked it or watch the highlights, knows that it was a finish for the ages. I was actually not screaming at the TV, but I was like, holy shit. I was like, this is insane. Yelagines and Christian Blumenfeld basically ran shoulder to shoulder for all 13.1 until Yelagines pulled
me out, man.
Right? I mean, I was on the edge of my seat, the last kilometer, also because I was yelling at the TV when Ironman decided they didn't have enough coverage. They were like, there's 0.4 to go on one of the most competitive races of all time. Let me show you hotels. And I was like, what the fuck? I was like, they have hints. dug themselves out of that hole and actually produced like a YouTube clip that I would encourage everyone to go watch this YouTube clip. It's the final kilometer or the final mile of them going head to head. Every single step they took, and it was wild to watch. And ultimately, Yelagines wins at a sprint finish, which I guess I mean, there's a billion things you could take from it. I think, listening to a couple of the podcasts earlier on that had like more, information, it was, I mean, the guy wins the race. He outsprints Christian Blumenfeld, which again, he's such an amazing athlete. We all know this, which is also kind of funny because he has the highest VO2 max, one of the ever recorded, yet can't win a sprint finish. It kind of shows you how important VO2 max is for stuff like that. But that Yelagines came out, had 2 mechanicals and a bike crash, and couldn't use his bike computer for the whole bike ride.
Wow.
If that happens to an age grouper, you're mentally...
Oops, sorry.
I was like, dude, you're pulling it. I was like...
I was going to pull it up so I could put it in the show
dude,
notes.
It's... and I'll go back to this, but the beauty of watching that video is there is no commentary. Which is great. You don't have to listen to Michael Lovato, but all you can hear are them breathing and the crowd going absolute apeshit, absolute bonkers. And you can also hear Casper Stories yell at Blumenfeld, with maybe 0.3 to go to tell him to try and win, which I also thought was cool. But it was, I mean, for a guy to go in, and this is like the race he's been going after. He comes out of T2, or excuse me, at a T1, slides his bike underneath one of the barriers, has a crash. Says post race that his hip was kind of feeling off, and then something with his rear derailleur was going off, so he had to get his chain to move over to get into certain gearing on an insanely hilly course. He gets off his bike twice to fix it. Had no idea what his power was, which also I think ended up being a complete game changer because he may not have biked as hard as he did because he would have been worried he would have blown up. And then runs, shoulder to shoulder, leads the whole run, which to me is why he should have won in the first place because, I love Blumenfeld. He's fun to watch and a crazy athlete, but he does tend to just sit back behind everybody and make them do the work. Apparently he kept telling Yella he couldn't do any pulls because he was waiting on Casper. And he said that was pretty annoying to have to lead out the whole run because there were some headwind parts of the course. And then they go sprint. Then he falls behind Blumenfeld the last kilometer, and you're like, is he going to go? Is he going to go? When are they going to go? Because last time you saw Blumenfeld in a sprint finish was the Olympics when he completely dusted Alex Yee and Hayden Wild. And you're like, who's going to go? When are they going to go? And then finally, Yella sprints past him, and then basically they go through this narrow part of the course with the barriers. And they they're almost swapping paint, legit. I think they were, because Yellow was trying to get position on the final corner, and it was a legit dead sprint to the finish. And I mean that's why the rate in which they were running was insane, and the power it was amazing to watch. Another thing that I thought was awesome, if you haven't watched any of the coverage, you should, was there's absolutely, and we talk a lot about the mass start. There is nothing better than a beach start in triathlon. Mm-hmm. And so to see these athletes going out there and doing a legit beach start was amazing. It felt like old school, how we were brought up in triathlon with the wave starts and everyone going off at the same time with age groupers. That was awesome. But yeah, I mean, for him, again, the defending 70.3 champion on a completely different course, for him to have those kind of mishaps and to gather himself mentally and emotionally to be like, all right, my day isn't done. I could definitely, these could be excuses. I can definitely, do the usual, pro triathlete that had a bad day is I'm going to race, but if I don't do well, but yeah, I've been fighting a virus for the last 2 weeks. That's why I didn't do very well. But he's like, no, I'm going to go out there. I don't need power. I got this. And then to lead that and then to out sprint, you know, a guy probably everybody thought was like the favorite going in a lot of ways, it was wild. So yeah, I mean, drop that in the show notes and show everybody because, and you watch it yourself too. Like it was again, because it's no sound, no commentating. It's not no sound, but it's no commentating, no like outside opinion. It's just two guys going mano a mano. You can hear their breathing, you can hear their footsteps, and seriously, dude, the crowd's going absolutely fucking nuts, and it was so awesome to watch. But again, like you have those things happen. You're in a run battle. You're forced to pull, you know, the whole time, and you just take it. I mean, it was a complete start to finish show that was again inspiring, but also like a little mind blowing to see these guys running at this pace after hitting a bike course. That was so freaking hard. Yeah, it was wild to watch.
Yeah, man, you get me fired up because you talk about this. You know, it's a kind of a thing with me, and I noticed it. Well, you said the beach start, and it was kind of going back to the roots and the old, you know, the perfection of the, you know, purity of things, and I was, you know, I've been talking about how, you know, the Badgers suck in football or whatever, but I watched this weekend and it was kind of snowy and it was like what they call football weather, right? You know, and I just feel like there's always a push to make everything kind of perfect and, you know, put everything in a dome and make it nice and pretty and keep it safe or whatever. And then it just loses it for me. You know, I was even like watching the World Series and there was some unbelievable games in that series, and you're watching and you can hear just how much interference they put into a stadium. You know, it's like the crowd is going wild, but they have to pump the volume of the speakers with the fake claps and all these weird sounds and everything. But anyway, getting back to the triathlon and the perfection of the routes and stuff like that. And just maybe it's a little bit harder and grittier, but that stuff carries itself. You know what I mean? Like you're saying, the final mile with no speaking, and it's just crowd noise, and it's just, you can hear them and see them. And that, it's like, I feel like we're gone so far away from that. We have to fill every void with something like that when the actual sport itself is worthy of the attention. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be all these glitzy transitions and fake sounds and all this stuff, the fake, like, get up and cheer fans, you know, they're up already. It's like, just let the emotion of the moment take over. And I'm really excited to watch this. I might have to go back and watch a little bit more because I'm just a purist in that regard. I just think that we get too, you know, like technical and try to get everything over the top with all these little distracting pieces and everything, but when the essence of the sport itself is enough, let's go back to that. I mean, you know, I'm watching that Badger game and it's crappy conditions out there, but the vibe was unbelievable. I mean, yeah, you know what I mean? Like, you've watched games, I'm sure, where your team's been playing in a snowy kind of crappy mixy kind of thing, and it's just I don't know, there's something more electric about it. It's kind of like what we were saying earlier about getting and running in the elements. It's just more intense. And you can sense it.
Because it's not I mean, again, like this, we get so caught up in like the extras, right, that we have with racing and the, you know, and the data and the watches and all this kind of stuff. But like, which I did find it like really ironic, more of like a habit, I think. But like when you're watching the video, like Yellen never looks at his watch. And I think Blumenfeld, even with like maybe a minute and a half to go, was looking at his watch.
Really?
Like, what the fuck? What do you think it's going to tell you?
Yeah, right.
Slow down. And are you going to slow down? No. And if it's telling you to speed up, can you? No. Right? You just are at your limit. You know, there's a chance, and it's probably true. I would have to imagine, even though he does look at his watch a ton, all those guys do. My guess is he was probably looking to see. He probably had distance on there, so he's probably seeing how much longer he has distance wise to try and probably plan out when he was going to try to make his move. That's got to be my guess. But it was, I mean, it was competition, and it wasn't, you know, to me, yeah, you're like, well, who trains the best, and who does it? And I thought that was cool that like Young Geens is a dad and he's a husband. Like, when he goes on camp, he takes his family with him. It's like two polar opposite individuals. One's basically living on training camp, year round, altitude like 10 months out of the year. That they can just do it. He doesn't have a girlfriend, have a wife. He's just kind of like it's triathlon 24/7, and then you got a guy like Yella Geens who obviously, you have a little more responsibility, right? When you're married and you have a little girl. I mean, that it was also so cool to see him, with his spouse and his kid, like right after the race. There's so many ways to be successful and to be awesome and to be a champion. And that goes for age groupers too. It's like, so again, it was cool to see that and to see like, and you could kind of tell like halfway through the run, if you even go back and watch like halfway, you kind of got that sense that Blumenfeld was just kind of hanging on, hoping he can win. At least I got that feeling. Versus Yella, I was like, he's not going to lose. He was refusing because he came out of T2. And he had like a little bit of I would say like a slower T2. His bike was falling over, like actually like fell off the rack. He had to go put it back. And he honestly, he looked like he was taking his fucking sweet time. Like I was like, dude, are you gonna, he looked almost as bad as Taylor Nibbs T1. They were taking forever. And so he comes out of the gate and just flies to catch up to the main group where Blumenfeld was. And then after about 1.5 kilometers, it was just them two. And it was like, these guys are just going to go. Because what you got to give Christian Blumenfeld was outside of the fact that he's just an amazing all-around athlete, was like, the dude can dig. I mean, you never question, did he give it his all, right? He just gives it his all. And then he either wins or he doesn't win. Obviously, like this year's been, I think by his standards, a failure with no championships, which is what it's all about. But yeah, I mean, it was a very purist finish. Again, like now that you can see it all, wild to see him finish like that. And then again, you got Kasper Stornes, who I thought for a hot minute, like he comes off the bike and you're like, he's done. And then with about 3K to go, you're like, he might catch them. He legit might catch them. He was flying. But yeah, I mean, it was again, like we mentioned this a few weeks ago, talking about Nice and then, Kona, that, they're, that's all luck, right? From the finish. But Scott DeRue, like the new Ironman CEO, he's got to be like, could I have had any better of a year? Mm-hmm. Right, you got Nice, you got the like group of 5 running together for so long. You got the Norwegians, fighting each other out with again, not such a close finish, but like it was complete theater. You got Kona, where you had 2 epic meltdowns, right? That was just like major drama and cinema. And then you had 70.3 Worlds. You had the comeback from the 2 girls that got pulled or stopped on course because of basically falling to the conditions that is Kona, right? And then in this race you had you had a head 3 seconds separated the champion in Blumenfeld. I mean, you couldn't have scripted it any better. I mean, for the sport, they have had one of those, because there have been. And was it a little boring on the women's race at the end because Lucy Charles was just so dominant? She had like a 3-minute gap. It was a little, but it wasn't really, because she had just come back from so much. And there have been plenty of years where once you're like 1K in, especially for 70.3 Worlds, you're like, this race is over. I can go move on with my day. And you just don't want to finish it. You don't want to watch. And to me, that's a shame, because there is no opportunity that's provided to them be inspired. And I guarantee you, a lot of people left watching both those races insanely inspired. Because the people that are watching, those are your consumers, right? Those are your age group athletes. So again, like, I mean, perfect year. I know there's a lot to be, figured out for next year. how they're going to do the coverage, on both, because there's obviously some challenges there, but yeah, I mean, it's, again, I'll probably watch it again. I watched it yesterday on the trainer as soon as somebody told me it popped up. I went back to watch it. I'll watch it twice. I'll probably watch it again. It was just mano a mano, going at it, shoulder to shoulder, just, body to body. I mean, it was cool to watch again for, no one's thinking about their heart rate. No one's thinking about their pace. They're just thinking about winning. And again, it's like, to me, that's just this course was a very spirit thing of the sport, where the course was insanely challenging. The backdrop was beautiful. It wasn't easy at all. It was just, and I think that's ultimately what brought people out, and we're so excited about it. I mean, the location looked freaking gorgeous. I mean, international travel sounds pretty brutal, but yeah, I mean, they're doing a lot of right things, and again, like I think they are headed deeply in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, I love that you talked about it, but they made it a tough course, and they just kind of got back to the essence of like, let's make this thing tough again. Because I mean, I'll be honest, man, sometimes I look at some of these 70.3s, and they're finishing so fast. It's kind of like disheartening in my mind. It's like, it's like, man, these are like Oli times, like
Seriously.
it really is kind of crazy sometimes. I mean, and at least they made this one, stretched it out a little bit with a tough bike course, To me, I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, and you're so true. And I love the fact too that, as we've always said, like, the swim matters. If you can't swim, especially in like this 7.3, you're done. I mean, you're just done. You got to be able to swim. The times that they're swimming are also just, it's all wild. I mean, you got to do it. You got to do it from front to back. You got to be a well-rounded athlete. You can't just hammer it on one and feel like you're going to hang on. I mean, I think those days are over. I think they are just over. If you can't be a really great swimmer, a really great cyclist, and a really great runner, I think your days are numbered. I don't think you're going to see a Lang type performance where he can be so far back and run to the field. I just don't think you're going to see it anymore. And yeah, I mean, like, oh, well, Kat Matthews, she ran her way to second, but I mean, listen, yes, she did. But again, like, if Lucy and Nib don't go out at murderer's row pace, they take 1 and 2 easy by minutes and minutes and minutes and minutes and minutes. And you just gotta be, and they swam front pack, they bike front pack, and all they had to do was get it there. I mean, yeah, so it's just, especially with Lucy, because she's just such a great runner. Her swim is the best. Her bike, I mean, Nib passed her, then she passed Nib, which I don't think I've ever seen in a race. She's like, I'll pass you right back. And Nib's been, regarded as like the best female or all around almost cyclist, male and female, in the sport for the last like 3 to 4 years. She's like, I see you pass me, I'm gonna get you back. And then to go and run and just fly. It's it's a cool time in the sport, and it's in my, like, I appreciate and love seeing them all look like, again, like well-rounded athletes, not the uber bikers that occasionally like will have their day, and not the runners that can swim second pack, sit in the draft pack and draft for 112 miles and run their way. It's you better know how to lead, and you better know how to win from the front, because if you can't, your chances are likely that you're not going to win. But I think it's cool. It raises the level of sport. It raises the level of competition. And usually that raises the level of, I mean, it has, right? You see the level that the pros have reached, and then you go and look at some of the freaking, age group times, and you're like, what is in the water right now? Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, very cool time. I think ultimately, very, very good for our sport.
I agree. I love it.
Yeah, go back and watch, man. You're gonna be jazzed. Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, that's all I got for today. I'm gonna go watch it as soon as we get off. Now I got myself pumped up just thinking of just watching it. I'm gonna peel off and go watch it again when I have a little bit of lunch.
Yeah, the stripped down essence of the finish. Let's do it.
Yeah. It's the no commentating part that's the best, because you're just listening to them just like go ballistic. The fans, I mean, just going. I mean, the barriers were jam packed the whole mile before.
Wow.
It was, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, enjoy yourself.
All right,
That's all I
man.
got for today. You got anything else?
Now let's just
Yeah.
wrap it in.
Let's wrap it in. Yeah, we appreciate you guys. We love you. As always, go to our website, C26Triathlon.com. It is our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community. If you need anything from Mike, he is available, Mike at C26Triathlon.com. Or if you need anything from me, Robbie at C26Triathlon.com.
All right, man. Have a good one.
Yeah, dude, I'll talk to you soon.
Let's see you.
See you, man.